The game never stops, and neither do we. Welcome to the SDH Network. We're always around the corner from everywhere. This is your Morning Espresso, brought to you by Oglethorpe University, Atlanta's premier undergraduate learning experience and soccer powerhouse. I'm Jason Longshore, and what a day around the world yesterday in World Cup qualifying. I think the final day outside of the playoffs, so the final day of the regular qualifying campaign, it's one of my favorite days in soccer, period. The drama in Europe was excruciating. I mean, I could probably come up with some other words that I shouldn't say, especially watching Scotland's roller coaster ride surrounded by supporters at the Brewhouse Cafe, of course, around the corner, lager in hand, obviously. And I mean, that was crazy enough. That was totally crazy with the bicycle kick from Scott McTominay. The man gets real tomatoes when he goes to Naples and becomes a superstar. Then all of the back and forth, and it looked like Scotland was going to throw it away by being too defensive. It's been the story of Steve Clarke's tenure. But also, the other story of his tenure is they keep finding ways, and they did again. Kieran Tierney with a left-footed rocket, and then when you think they're going to run the clock out, you get a goal from midfield just to put a cap on everything. Make sure you're following us on social media. You can see what the reaction looked and sounded like at the Brewhouse. So that was at 3 o'clock. That game ended at about 5 o'clock. I get home, cook some dinner, and CONCACAF decided to step up and say, hold on, we've got a little something here too. 6 games at 8 o'clock, and you had a lot of back and forth in these. One of the final kicks of the years-long qualifying campaign worldwide, that sent Suriname into the Interconfederation playoff at Honduras' expense. Just stunning stuff. It looked like Suriname was all the way out after a very disappointing performance, and they got a goal in stoppage time to jump Honduras in the playoff standings after being down 3-0. That rescued them, gives them a lifeline. Jamaica, they thought they had a penalty late at home, and it was overturned after video assistant referee got involved, and I think it was correctly overturned. So many different things. We've got a lot to talk about here. But I want to, before we get into it, I just want to remind you guys, days like the last few we've had, Ireland, Troy Parrott, late goal to send them into the playoff. Scotland, all over the place with a bad performance in Greece, but then a good fight back at the end, but it came up a little bit short, and then a bicycle kick, and then falling behind, and then coming back and getting to the World Cup for the first time since 98. Curacao making history. We'll talk about them in a second. Suriname holding on to a spot somehow and keeping their playoff hopes alive. All of that wrapped up is why we love the sport. Don't ever let anybody fire off a funny, ha-ha, cynical tweet about the international break. Don't. Just remind them of this. International football is an amazing thing. This is why we love talking about soccer. This is what keeps us coming back. Soccer at its most dramatic, its most human, its wildest. All of that's the backdrop. We got a ton of stuff to get into on Morning Espresso. We'll dive into a night where some of the smallest islands in the world become the biggest stories. Giants stumbling, and also in an international friendly, the U.S. men's national team delivered one of its strongest performances in a long time. All right, let's start at Curacao, the smallest nation to ever reach a men's World Cup. And they had to do it on the road in Kingston, Jamaica. One of the great underdog achievements in the history of the game. Population, I've seen it listed as 155,000. I've seen it listed as 185,000. Smallest nation ever to qualify for a World Cup, smaller than Iceland, no question about it. They were able to survive with a scoreless draw in Jamaica. It was tense. It was frantic. Stoppage time, VAR reversal of a Jamaican penalty. That gave them the point that they needed. a little tiny pocket of blue. Supporters were flown in by 2 chartered planes from Curacao. That little pocket of folks went absolutely nuts amid the 35,000 Jamaican fans. Dick Advocaat, the manager who has gotten them there, he wasn't on the touchline. He had returned home to be with his ill wife, but he watched every second. He was in contact with his staff. He sent a message to the camp afterwards. Incredible, fantastic, so good. What an adventure. Now he is going to a World Cup in his 4th decade in the game and with his 3rd national team. The foundation of this run, it goes back to 2004 when the Federation first set out to recruit Dutch-based players with heritage from Curacao. That pipeline now includes the Bakuna brothers, Leandro and Juninho, Thais Chong, Kenji Gore, and others, players who grew up in the Dutch development system but proudly wear that Curacao badge. They won all 4 early round matches. They navigated through a number of different potential potholes, but they get it done. It wasn't a fluke. It was a project realized, and now they're going to be in the December 5th World Cup draw in Washington, D.C. Joining them will be Haiti, and it's as emotional, maybe more. It's different. They've been unable to play a single match at home due to the ongoing crisis in Port-au-Prince. Armed groups control most of the capital. Over 1 million people are displaced. The team has effectively been in exile throughout the entire World Cup qualifying campaign. Their manager, Sebastien Meunier, has never even been to Haiti, but his team found a way. Unity, discipline, 2 crucial wins over Costa Rica and Nicaragua in Curacao. Funny how things all tie together. That closes out qualifying. The 2-0 win over Nicaragua Wednesday night sealed their first World Cup appearance since 1974. Meunier said it afterwards, unity, unity, and more unity. We never panicked. All the players in the squad are based abroad. Every match has been played away from home, but Haiti will also be in the World Cup draw on December 5th. Panama joined both of them. They did what they needed to do, a 3-0 win over El Salvador. They win the group. They reach another World Cup with a deeper, more mature core than they did in 2018. Suriname led the group going into the start of the night. They were down 3-0 to already eliminated Guatemala, and there had been all the conjecture and conspiracy theories about Guatemala basically laying down for Suriname to get revenge on Panama for knocking them out in 2018. But they didn't. Guatemala fought hard. Darwin Lom from North Georgia had a goal. Really good performance from Guatemala, but Suriname's late goal was an own goal. That made it 3-1. That goal gets Suriname into the Interconfederation playoff on goal differential over Honduras. Basically, the entire campaign came down to that one final play. It's something that CONCACAF World Cup qualifying does better than almost anywhere else. Jamaica will also be in the Interconfederation playoff, but they're going to need a new manager. Steve McLaren resigned moments after the match. He read a prepared statement thanking players and supporters while acknowledging the need for new energy. That was a little unexpected. So what will Jamaica do going into the playoff? They've got a few months to decide. What are Curacao, Haiti, and Panama going to look like at the World Cup? Where is their spot going to come up in the World Cup draw? Can Suriname bounce back after a really disappointing 90 minutes, but then finding a goal in stoppage time to give them another lifeline? I love World Cup qualifying. I love international football. Again, don't let anybody get their little funny tweets off about, the international break. Show them these moments. Show them these stories, and maybe smack them over the head with it if you have to. I mean, let's go back to Europe for a minute. Yeah, I feel like everybody's talked about Scotland, and it's a game that was a little bit further back in the chaos that was yesterday. But don't forget about Craig Gordon. He's 42 years old. He isn't playing for Hearts this season regularly. He nearly retired in the summer. He was called back into the national team for these 2 games, and he helps them get through. It wasn't pretty. They gave up more goals than they would like. I don't think it's on him. But he gave them that stability to get them there. He said it's been 20-odd years of trying to get here. And that moment was worth every single bit of heartbreak that he had wearing the Scotland badge, all the injuries he's had to overcome. It's a moment he'll never forget. It's a moment Scotland will never forget. Just incredible stuff. Spain gets through, no shock there. You had a little bit of a wild ride with Austria getting past Bosnia and Herzegovina for Austria to qualify for the first time since 1998. Switzerland got in. Belgium got in. No worries with those. We'll get you ready for everything World Cup draw as we get closer to December 5th. And go ahead and put that down on your calendar. You might want to take a sick day. We're going to be at the Brew House for everything World Cup draw. All of our coverage will start early in the morning on that Friday as we get you ready with all the permutations of what could happen in the World Cup draw. We'll have live coverage beforehand. We will have live reaction afterwards. We're going to have a special over on 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app at 6 o'clock, breaking everything down. Whew. It really feels real that the World Cup is coming to Atlanta and coming to the United States, Mexico, and Canada in less than 12 months. And we're going to know who those teams are here in just a few weeks. We know one of those teams is going to be the United States, and they're not going to be in Atlanta unless the knockout rounds end up bringing them here, which is, who knows, it's possible. But there was a lot of talk about this U.S. team earlier in 2025, and I will share a message from our good friend Trey Young and request that the apologies are as loud as the disrespect. Judging from the post-game press conference, I don't know if that's going to happen, but I digress. Tampa was the site last night. The U.S., 4 goals in the first half, 5-1 win over Uruguay. First time the U.S. has scored 4 in the first half against a South American opponent. First time Uruguay has conceded 4 in the first half since the 70s against Brazil in Rio. 5 goals against the top 30 team, 5 different goal scorers, 3 first-time scorers. Or sorry, not 5 different goal scorers. Sorry, 3 first-time scorers. Alex Freeman, Sebastian Berhalter, Diego Luna, Tanner Tessman, all players stepping up. Alex Freeman, if you've listened to the Morning Espresso, if you've listened to me talk about the U.S. men's national team for the last not quite 12 months, Alex Freeman's been one that I've looked at. And I said it a while back that I thought he could be the one who jumps from where he was in the pecking order to being a regular next summer. That second goal from him last night. Whoo. Kid's got it. He is the epitome of a modern defender. And I think in the way he can play as a right back, he can be a wing back. I think the way that Mauricio Pochettino wants to play with 3 center backs, he is the ideal joker center back. And it's probably a term I made up. I don't know. In being that center back who is on the outside of the 3 and can get forward like a fullback would, but can drop back and be the third center back when you're under pressure. He's got the body type to do it. He's got the intelligence to do it. He's got the ability to do it. I'm so impressed with Alex Freeman. First goal, great header. Second goal, kid's got quality. Kid's got absolute quality. The versatility as well, that's going to be huge for Mauricio Pochettino. He played confidently. He showed that ability to adapt. Just so impressive. The questions after the game, the first 2 questions in the post-game press conference were both about really zeroing in on what this team did without its regular players. And Pochettino took exception to that. And I'm actually really good with the way that he messaged this. He said, stop talking about regular players. He said it's disrespectful. He said, this is the U.S. national team. Everyone represents the same badge. This idea that some players are locked into spots, he's pushed back on that consistently. So it's not a surprise that he reacted the way that he did. And I think he was very frustrated because in general, it felt like questions trying to find a way to diminish this performance when this was a great performance and this is a performance that should be celebrated. Managers are going to fight for their players and they're going to defend their players in press conferences. No question. And they should. And that's very important. They can use that as an opportunity to speak to their players in a different way than they would in the locker room. But I like that Mauricio Pochettino is not bowing to anyone. And he is, frankly, showing why he was hired. he was not hired to be the same as we've had. He was not hired to toe the line. He was not hired to just, smile and nod. He was hired to come here and create a team that could reach its full potential in the summer of 2026. And I will just repeat one more time that this idea that he was wrong because he doesn't know his starting 11 right now for the World Cup, and that he was wrong because he's looked at different players, and that he was wrong because he's looked at Major League Soccer players, and that he was wrong because they had some bad losses along the way, and whatever else the criticisms have been. He was building for the summer of 2026, not for even this game, which was a great win. One of the best the U.S. has had in a long time. This win means nothing if next summer isn't what we hope it is. And to be realistic in what we hope it is, get out of the group, win a round of 32 game. That's realistic. Get to the final 16. Let the chips fall where they may at that point. That's realistic. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. That's not diminishing the group. That's not saying anything negative. He shouldn't say that to his team. No, that's not what you say inside the locker room. But being realistic on the outside and looking at it, if you get to the final 16, you have had a great tournament. That's what I want to see from this team. That performance last night, what we saw against Paraguay, that was what I want to see for this team. And I'll remind you again of what Gustavo Alfaro, the manager for Paraguay, said. The intensity that this team is playing with right now, teams playing against the U.S. have to match that or they're going to get overrun. That is such a huge compliment and such a huge deal, and that is a credit to Mauricio Pochettino and his coaching staff and to the players for buying in. I really like where this group is. He got everything he wanted out of this camp. Yeah, he didn't have Christian Pulisic and other players, not regular players. I'm not going to say it. Mauricio, don't yell at me. He got a chance to evaluate a wide-ranging group of players. He made 9 changes from the Paraguay win to the Uruguay win. This depth chart is deep. It is wide. I can't wait to see how everything comes together in 2026. Competition is real for every spot in this team. USN's 2025 unbeaten in 5. All games against teams that are coming to the World Cup next summer. All games against teams in the top 40 in the FIFA rankings. March friendlies, probably going to be against Belgium and Portugal. Both could be in Atlanta. I think both will probably get announced after the World Cup draw, making sure that you don't end up in the same group with them somehow. Can't wait. Can't wait. Those are going to be the games in March. You'll have some games before the tournament starts in June, and it's going to be a journey. It's going to be a journey for Mexico as well. They closed their year with a 2-1 loss to Paraguay and San Antonio. 6 straight without a win since the Gold Cup. Boos in the Alamo Dome following the boos in Torreon over the weekend. Disjointed attacking play, defensive hesitation. Raul Jimenez, his penalty leveled the match briefly, but Paraguay immediately sliced through Mexico to restore the lead. Yeah, Mexico won the Nations League and the Gold Cup, but they've ended the year poorly. What's going to happen with Javier Aguirre, with Rafa Marquez? Is Rafa Marquez going to end up being the one who steps in with the fan base calling for Aguirre's head? Is it, going back to what we've talked about with the U.S. men's national team, is it more of the players are what the players are, and this team, the expectations should be lower? Is it the discussion about people want to see Mexico play in a different way that these players and Aguirre just aren't going to do or aren't capable of doing? It's not good. We're going to try to get to the bottom of that ahead of the World Cup draw and dig into it, because Mexico will be a seeded team, and right now they're a seeded team you'd like to get, whereas with the U.S., that's a seeded team that you don't want to get if you're coming out of pot 2. Let's move into Major League Soccer right now. Atlanta United declined Brooks Lennon's option along with some others, ending a run of 177 appearances, one of the longest-serving players in club history. Brooks is a player who I don't feel like got enough respect here in Atlanta. He played his way into national team contention before injuries, and I think inconsistency and look, maybe frustration about where he was getting rated. His performances in the first half of his Atlanta United tenure put him into the conversation as a national team fullback. No question. I think he took too much criticism here in Atlanta. He's going to be successful. He's 28 years old. He's going to go somewhere else in the league and be successful. I think he is a top-tier Major League Soccer fullback. But age, timing of everything, new manager coming in, it did feel a little inevitable that this would happen. I can't say it was a surprise. I just want to say, in my role and what I do, I have to give Brooks a ton of credit because he was one of the players that I always knew I could count on for a post-game interview when no one else really wanted to talk after a bad performance or a tough night on the road or what have you. Every time that I requested Brooks, he spoke. And he was always really good with his answers. He was always very thoughtful, very professional. You know, I mean, look, he's got to say things he's got to say. And I never questioned his sincerity. I never worried about him saying no to an interview request. That's rare. And I give him a ton of credit. And I give him a ton of credit for his performances here. The most appearances for an outfield player in Atlanta United history, Brooks Lennon. San Diego, they made the 19-year-old Luca Bombino his loan permanent. He becomes a foundational piece of their backline as they continue on. The most serious story in MLS right now sits in Philadelphia. Ernst Tanner faces allegations of sexist, racist, and homophobic conduct stretching back several years. According to Pablo Iglesias Maurer of The Guardian, MLS investigated. They interviewed 8 of 13 potential witnesses. They could not corroborate the allegations to the required standard, but they did mandate that Tanner undergo a structured remedial program. Philadelphia has said that they also did that earlier in his tenure. It's the actual claims, and read the article in The Guardian if you want to get into the details. It's a horrendous look. I mean, I don't even know how else to describe this. I'm not going to share some of the things that reportedly were said because on so many different fronts, they are abhorrent. It's a really bad look for a team that on the field, and he was involved in this, Ernst Tanner, made a really tough decision to move on from Jim Curtin after missing the playoffs last year, and the team won the Supporters' Shield. But this kind of behavior does not belong in any workplace. So I don't know what direction all this goes. The article comes out yesterday, and I will be very intrigued to see what the reaction is nationally about that. Next up, the NWSL Anonymous GM survey from ESPN. It's an unfiltered look at how the league's decision makers see the present and the future of the league. A few key themes as we start to wrap up this edition of the Morning Espresso. Most GMs believe that the salary cap, which is fixed through 2030, is the league's biggest threat in competing with top clubs and top leagues in Europe. Somebody like Chelsea can just outspend U.S. teams. We've seen that with Alyssa Thompson, with Naomi Girma. Some feel that compliance with the rules in the league is improving. Others insist that bending the rules is fairly common. There's confusion about certain regulations as well. Kind of a mixed bag on the commissioner, Jessica Berman. She was praised for commercial growth and stability in the league, pushed to invest more on the sporting side. A wide range of opinions, but the general consensus, the league's growing really fast and they have to keep adapting to that. I totally agree with that. Expansion, Cincinnati is viewed as the next logical market. GMs do warn that expanding too fast without raising the cap could dilute the quality. I disagree with that. I just think that it puts a lower ceiling on the quality. Expand the cap along with it in a realistic way. I think a salary cap's very important. Do it in the right way, and this league can continue to rise. The other interesting element from the survey to me is how people see the marketing of the league. Because, look, you've lost some major stars in the women's game like Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, mega superstars. That leaves a vacuum. Trinity Rodman right now is the most mentioned potential megastar, but her contract's up and Europe is circling and she might not be here next year. I think this is an opportunity for the league to really focus on club-driven identity as opposed to individual player star power. You always need both. But I look at this with the WNBA right now as well. You can compare it to the NBA in the 80s and 90s where it was very star-driven, and when those stars went away, the league suffered for a little bit because the teams were secondary to the individual stars. I think in the WNBA, they're dealing with that right now. The individual team identities are weaker than the individual player identities. I think in the NWSL, you have a really good balance. I do think there is an opportunity to push the individuals a little bit harder while still building the club identities. It needs to be 50-50 in a perfect world. It will always get out of whack at times because a generational superstar will come along and swallow up some of that attention. That's okay. It's riding that wave. It's an interesting time for marketing the NWSL. I can't wait to see what Atlanta does. I can't wait to see what route they take. It's going to be different than they did with Atlanta United. I think the women's game is just a different thing entirely in terms of star power potentially being a very useful tool, whereas with Atlanta United's build, they did not go for established stars. They made them once they came here. Will the NWSL team do that as well? I'm fascinated to see how all this goes. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, the refill, quick hits before we close out. Northern Super League in Canada, their women's league, over 275,000 tickets were sold this season. 30 million in Canadian dollars revenue. Top-tier salaries, expansion coming in 2027. A really good start for the Northern Super League. Barcelona, they are returning to a partially open Spotify Camp Nou this weekend for league play, and they are approved to do that for Champions League play as well coming up in their next home match there. Spain, Mikel Oyarzabal, he becomes the first player in national team history to score or assist in 9 straight matches. A very underrated player, but he has set a record that has never happened in 100-plus years of the Spanish national team. Morocco, they extend their win streak to 18 heading into AFCON on home soil. Liverpool and PayPal, they launch a major global partnership, including PayPal Plus rewards for fans. That's your Morning Espresso for today. Make sure you're following @SoccerDown here across all platforms for extended coverage throughout the day. We'll be back tomorrow to dig deeper into the fallout from World Cup qualifying, looking ahead to the December 5th World Cup draw, looking ahead to the return to league play as well. Thank you so much for listening. The SDH Network, where every pass, voice, and dream connect. See y'all tomorrow.